All right, ready to get a little technical? We're diving into the world of glass-lined equipment today.
Not exactly a household term, I know.
Yeah, but it's actually way more important than most people realize.
Oh, absolutely. Crucial stuff for industries like pharmaceuticals and chemicals, all those giant, super durable containers and pipes they use. Yeah, that's glass-lined equipment.
The stuff that makes sure things don't explode or, I don't know, melt when they're mixing up all those chemicals, right?
Exactly. And today we're looking at Standard Glass Lining Technology Limited, SGLT for short. They make this stuff, and they're about to go public with an IPO.
Yeah, an IPO. So we're here to figure out if it's worth, jumping in.
Basically, should you buy their stock? That's the question, right?
Right. And to figure that out, well, we've got a stack of sources here. News articles, financial reports, the works.
We've done the digging, so you don't have to. We'll break down their business model, financials, growth prospects, the whole 9 yards.
And by the end, you'll know whether SGLT is a company you want to, well, bet on.
Exactly. So, shall we get started?
Let's do it. First step, what does SGLT actually do? Like, where does their money come from?
Okay, so they specialize in manufacturing this glass-lined equipment, but also stainless steel and nickel alloy equipment.
So, like, a range of industrial strength containers and pipes.
Yeah, things super robust, inert surfaces. They can handle highly corrosive substances, high temperatures, you name it.
Interesting. So we're talking pharmaceuticals, specialty chemicals, that sort of thing.
Right, those are their two main customers, pharmaceuticals and chemicals. And considering, well, how much stuff relies on those processes.
SGLT is right in the thick of it, huh?
Oh, absolutely. They're not just some small player either. They're one of the top 3 manufacturers of glass-lined equipment in all of India.
Top 3 in India. That's got to be huge.
It is. And even more impressive, they've been the fastest growing among their competitors for the past 3 years.
Fast-growing India major player. Okay, now I'm intrigued. But let's get down to brass tacks. How are their financials looking?
All right, let's talk numbers. So revenue growth first. Remember how we said SGLT's riding that pharma and chemical boom in India?
Yeah.
Well, the revenue reflects that. Last fiscal year, their revenue from operations was over $5.4 billion.
That's a lot of rupees.
It is, and that represents a 15% increase from the previous year.
15% growth. Not bad at all. But are they actually making a profit? What are their margins like?
Oh, they're profitable, all right. And their EBITDA margins are pretty impressive, consistently around the 18% mark.
EBITDA. See, this is where I get lost.
Yeah.
For those of us who don't speak, fluent finance.
Right, right. So EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Basically, it gives you a clearer picture of the company's operational efficiency. And that 18%, it means they're doing a good job managing costs and, well, making money from their core business.
Okay, that makes sense. Strong revenue growth, healthy margins. So far, so good. But what about their actual profit after all the expenses and taxes are taken out?
Their profit after tax, or PAT, has also been going up. So sustained profitability even after all that.
All right, so the profit picture looks good.
Right.
But what about their debt? Got to ask about the debt.
Of course. That's always an important factor. Now, SGLT does have some borrowings, but here's the key. They're using a lot of that debt to fund their expansion plans.
So strategic debt, not just piling it on for no reason.
Exactly. And their debt-to-equity ratio, which tells you how much debt they're using compared to their equity, has actually been improving. It means their financial position is getting stronger.
Okay, that's good to hear. Now, how does SGLT stack up against their competition in the glass lining world?
So they are a major player in India, but they're up against some big names. GMM Pfaudler, HLE Glascoat, all vying for market share.
Yeah, I've heard of those companies. GMM Pfaudler, they're global, right? And HLE Glasgow, they seem to be pretty strong in India.
That's right. But here's what makes SGLT interesting. They claim to be the only Y-cell supplier in India who can make a certain type of massive glass-lined reactor.
Wait, seriously? They've got something no one else in India can offer. That's got to be a huge advantage.
It is. It's used in large-scale manufacturing, where you need huge volumes in specific conditions. And the fact that they're the only ones, well, that suggests a pretty lucrative market.
Fascinating. Definitely sounds like they found their niche. But let's get to the main event, their IPO. What are the details and what should we be looking out for?
All right, so first, the size of the IPO. They're aiming to raise OLOT billion. Big number.
Billion, wow, okay. And what are they going to do with all that money?
They've laid out a pretty clear plan in their prospectus. A big chunk is going towards expanding their manufacturing capacity.
Makes sense. Got to keep up with demand, right?
Exactly. And they're also planning to use some of the funds to pay down a portion of their existing debt, Always a smart move.
Yeah, reduces their interest burden and frees up more cash flow for, well, for growing the business.
Precisely. Now, before the main IPO, they also had a pre-IPO placement. Raised $400 million from a select group of investors.
So some people are already betting on them, huh? Shows there's some confidence in their growth story.
Definitely. But of course, every investment has risks, and SGLT has been upfront about those in their IPO documents.
Okay, let's talk about those risks. What are the potential pitfalls investors need to be aware of?
One of the big ones they highlighted is raw material costs, their main ingredient. Glass, obviously. And if the price of glass fluctuates, that could hit their profitability.
Yeah, makes sense. If their costs go up, they either have to raise prices or take a hit on their margins.
Exactly. And in a competitive industry, raising prices isn't always easy. Another thing to consider is customer concentration. They rely on a few big clients for a significant portion of their revenue.
So losing even one of those clients could have a big impact.
It could. So those are two key risks: raw material costs and customer concentration. And of course, there's always competition to think about.
Right, they're not operating in a vacuum, but they do have that unique mass reactor thing going for them. That's got to count for something.
It does. It shows they're innovating, trying to differentiate themselves. And speaking of differentiation, their growth strategy is pretty ambitious.
Yeah, before we dive into that, what stood out to you so far about SGLT? What are your initial impressions?
You know, I'm really impressed with how they've managed to find their niche in this market, that massive reactor. It's a prime example of how they're developing specialized solutions. I think that could be a real differentiator as they grow.
Yeah, it shows they're not afraid to think big. But speaking of thinking big, let's talk about that growth strategy. What are their plans for the future?
Well, buckle up. They're not holding back when it comes to expansion. They've got some really aggressive expansion plans, and they're investing heavily to boost their manufacturing capacity.
Yeah, we talked about how they're going to use some of that IPO money to expand, especially for their glass lining and stainless steel nickel alloy equipment.
Right. They've actually set a target for their glass lining capacity. They want to hit tons per year.
Tons. That's a serious jump. And they're also going to increase their stainless steel and nickel alloy production, right?
Yep. Seems like they're banking on those pharma and chemical sectors to just keep growing in India.
Makes sense. They've got to be ready to meet that demand. And they've also mentioned the possibility of acquisitions, haven't they?
They have. And acquisitions can be a really smart move. Faster way to grow sometimes.
Yeah, it can help you get into new markets, new technologies, even, well, sometimes you just buy at the competition.
Exactly. And SGLT, well, they've actually got a track record of making some pretty strategic acquisitions. Just in 2023, they made two big ones.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about those. One was Yuzha's Glass Lining Industries, right?
Yep, that's the one. They were all about manufacturing and servicing PTFE pipes, fittings, all that.
So not just buying a competitor, they were diversifying, expanding their product line.
Exactly. Smart move. And the other acquisition was CPK Engineers.
What was that one about?
That was all about beefing up their stainless steel fabrication capabilities. So again, broadening their offerings, making sure they're a big player in that market.
Sounds like they know what they're doing when it comes to acquisitions. So far, though, we've been mostly talking about India. Any plans to go global?
Well, their main focus is definitely still India, but they have started taking a few steps towards international expansion.
Interesting. What kind of steps?
They've got these agency arrangements for sales and marketing in Bangladesh, and even a distribution agreement in Russia. Plus, they're looking at resale arrangements in North America, South America, Europe, you name it.
Wow. So they're testing the waters all over the place.
Yeah, I'd say so. But they're being cautious, making sure they're strong at home before going all in on global expansion.
Smart move. So we've got domestic expansion through more capacity and acquisitions, plus a little international exploration. But for our listeners out there, what does all this mean? Why should they care about SGLT's growth plans?
Well, if they pull it off, it could mean big things for early investors.
Yeah, imagine them snagging a bigger chunk of the Indian market and making a splash globally. Their revenue, their profits could skyrocket.
Exactly. And that usually translates to a higher share price, right? So investors who get in early could see some nice returns. But of course, gotta remember, nothing's guaranteed.
Right. Growth isn't a sure thing, and there are always risks, especially in a fast-moving market like this one. Got to weigh those potential rewards against the risks we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. But I think there's another layer to this story that's worth mentioning. It's about India's ambition to become a global pharmaceutical powerhouse.
Oh yeah, the pharmacy to the world thing. I've heard about that. They want to be a major supplier of medicines globally, right?
Right. And that's where SGLT comes in. They provide the specialized equipment that's crucial for manufacturing those pharmaceuticals, especially the APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients.
So they're not just making equipment, they're providing the tools that could help India become a leader in the pharmaceutical industry.
Exactly. Their success is kind of tied to the success of the Indian pharmaceutical industry as a whole. If India wants to become a major player on the global stage, companies like SGLT are going to be crucial.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what should our listeners be thinking about?
Well, we've looked at SGLT's business model, their financials, how they stack up against the competition, and their plans for growth. We've even talked about the risks involved.
We've covered a lot of ground, and it's
Yeah.
been fascinating to, well, uncover all these insights.
But like with any investment, the final decision is up to you, the listener. We've given you the information, the tools to understand SGLT. Now it's up to you to decide if it's the right investment for you.
Should you buy into SGLT's IPO? Do your own research, think about everything we've talked about, and make a decision that works for you. But as you're thinking it over, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Imagine a world where India really does become the pharmacy to the world, making affordable, high-quality medications available everywhere.
And in that world, companies like SGLT, with their specialized equipment and their drive to innovate, would be the ones behind the scenes making it happen.
It's a powerful thought, isn't it? The possibility of SGLT helping to shape the future of global healthcare. With their expertise in this specialized equipment, they're really in a unique position.
It really is. Their expertise in this specialized equipment, they're really in a unique position.
Right, at a crucial point in this whole evolving landscape.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, so for our listeners, what's the bottom line here? What are the key takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I'd say SGLT looks like a company that's, riding this wave of growth, all thanks to those booming pharmaceutical and chemical industries in India. Plus, they've got a solid financial track record, good margins, and a clear plan for expanding, both in India and internationally.
And they've got that, well, that unique niche. Being the only supplier in India for that massive glass-lined reactor, that's going to be a big advantage.
Oh, absolutely. Shows they can innovate, cater to specific industry needs. And that could really drive their growth as they get bigger. But we can't forget about the risks, right?
Right. Got to keep those in mind. Raw material prices, customer concentration, competition,
Yeah.
all things that could affect how well they do in the future.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all about weighing those risks against the potential rewards. No investment is a sure thing, and that includes SGLT. But I think what's really interesting here is, their potential role in India's ambitions, that whole pharmacy to the world idea.
Yeah, India supplying affordable medicines globally. It's a pretty powerful vision.
It is. And if that vision becomes reality, companies like SGLT, with their specialized equipment and, their innovative spirit, they could be leading the way.
The unsung heroes behind this big shift in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up, what's the message for our listeners?
Well, SGLT seems like an interesting opportunity, but it's not without its challenges. Before you make any decisions, you need to do your own research. Dig deeper. Think about everything we've talked about. Their business model, their financials, their potential for growth, and of course, the risks.
Think about the whole picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Arm yourself with knowledge, weigh the pros and cons, and then, make your own decision. One that fits your investment goals and, how much risk you're comfortable with.
Should you invest in SGLT's IPO? That's up to you. But don't just look at the numbers. Think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Think about the impact they could have as India tries to become a global leader in pharmaceuticals.
Think about the possibility of, them contributing to a world where everyone has access to affordable, high-quality medicines.
That's a goal worth considering. All right, that's it for our deep dive into SGLT. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and, keep diving deep into the world around you.